Welcome to Whispers at 3 a.m., where I share stories that should never be remembered, and even less so heard late at night. These aren't bedtime tales. Each episode is a fragment of someone's memory. It might be mine, it might be yours, or it might belong to someone who lived a long time and vanished just as quickly. If you're listening to this podcast at midnight, alone, in a dark room, check your nearby radios. If you see a frequency marked 0.0 FM, turn it off, or put your headphones in and keep going. I'm a horror storyteller, but I never imagined I'd get trapped in one of my own stories. My name is Kwa. I run a small podcast called Things You Shouldn't Hear at 3 a.m. It all started from late-night coffee sessions with friends, where we'd trade bizarre local legends, haunted houses, ghost bridges, that road where cars go in but never come out. Old stuff, cliché even, but hearing it in the dead of night still made your skin crawl. I loved that feeling, the chill, the pull. The more I recorded, the more serious I got. I invested in a good mic, learned how to edit audio, started interviewing locals. A really creepy episode might pull a few thousand listens. Not a lot, but enough to remind me there are others out there who crave the strange like I do. Eventually, I started going to these haunted places myself, recording on location. There's something about capturing the real soundscape. Dry leaves, midnight insects, a distant cricket that no effect pack can replicate. It gave my podcast a different edge. Last week, I decided to go further. It had been too long since a new episode truly unnerved me. I chose a forest near the border between two states. Officially, it's public land, part of a natural preservation zone. But locals call it Deep Edge, an unofficial name passed through whispers. It's where a mass disappearance happened in the fall of 1971. 12 people, 3 entire families, vanished while camping there. Tents still standing, backpacks untouched, campfires still smoldering. But no one, not a single trace, was ever found. No blood, no footprints. Even search dogs lost the trail completely. Since then, the area's been abandoned. Every now and then, a thrill-seeking group goes in, but they all say the same thing. We couldn't stay more than a few hours. No idea why. They describe it as suffocating, like being watched, or simply, the forest feels wrong. I managed to rent an old cabin near the area, once used as a ranger station. It had a generator-powered electrical system, running water, a bed, gas stove, and most importantly, a vintage radio. No Wi-Fi, no phone reception. I had to use paper maps and a wristwatch like it was 1980. I arrived late in the afternoon, sunlight still piercing the tree canopy. The cabin sat halfway up a gentle slope, surrounded by tall pines and poplars. A red dirt trail led from the main road to the door, about a 15-minute drive, isolated but not dangerous. Inside, the cabin was coated with a thin layer of dust but free of mildew. Small windows, sheer beige curtains, an old wall clock with two thin black hands, wooden floor, round table, an empty bookshelf, and a silvery gray radio tucked into a corner with a matte black tuning dial. I set up my gear. Condenser mic, laptop, small mixer. I recorded a few intros for the new episode, layered in some ambient sounds from a mic left near the window. Then I took a walk to capture natural background audio. Dry leaves rustling, soft footsteps over pine needles, wind brushing through the treetops. There were no birds, no crickets. I only noticed that when I played the file back. I checked the mic, still working fine, but the background was eerily silent. Just my breathing, a few footfalls, and then nothing, as if the forest itself had been muted. That struck me as strange, but also thrilling. If I felt the air was off, this podcast might actually be special. I made instant noodles, drank half a beer, and started editing on my laptop. Night fell fast. No streetlights. No passing cars. Outside the window was pitch black. I tried focusing, but a faint clack made me jump. The wind nudging the curtain? Wood contracting from temperature. I told myself that, but still found my eyes flicking to the door again and again. Near midnight, I felt mentally heavy. Not tired, the cabin was simply too quiet. It felt like sound was being drained from my ears, leaving a hollow stillness in my head. I turned on the radio, not for news, just to have something. A human voice, gentle music, anything. I turned the dial, moving through the frequencies. 88.3, 89.5, 90.1. Just static. Not even clean static. It sounded like something was wriggling underneath the noise. Like someone whispering behind a curtain of sound, too faint to understand. I kept turning. 93.7, 95.5, 98.1. Still nothing. But then, as I reached the edge of the dial, the green display on the radio blinked and landed on an impossible number. 0.0 FM. I frowned. That frequency doesn't exist. But the display was clear. No blur, no flicker. And the thing that chilled me wasn't the number. It was the voice that came out of the speaker. It was my voice. I thought I was being paranoid until I lifted the rug. When that voice came through the radio, I froze in place. Not because it was scary in the blood and screams horror movie kind of way, but because it sounded exactly like me. Every breath, every pause, even that slight rasp I get when I'm tired, like I was listening to a recording I had no memory of making. The broadcast wasn't rushed or urgent, just slow, almost hollow. No emotion, no natural story rhythm. It read like a technical report, emotionless, yet chillingly precise. November 1st, the cabin is completely silent. No insects, no wind. The room feels too sealed, like being inside a vacuum chamber. I took a step back from the radio and nearly tripped over a chair. The wall clock above it rattled faintly, but its hands hadn't moved. They were still stuck at 11:47, exactly where they had been since I arrived. I tried recording the forest sounds, but only picked up white noise. Maybe it's a mic issue. Or maybe the forest just has nothing left to say. I glanced at my laptop, still running the recording software. The timeline clearly showed each clip I had recorded earlier that afternoon. No noise, no glitches, but the broadcast was describing everything, like it knew what I was doing, what I was thinking. Then came the sentence that made me drop my phone. I feel something uneven under the rug, like someone stood in one spot too long and left a depression. When I lift the rug, I see beneath it is. I didn't let the voice finish. I walked to the center of the room, where a pale beige rug sat beneath the work table. I'd never paid attention to it before. Nobody ever does. But now, it was like something unseen was pulling my gaze straight to it. I knelt, placed my hand on the fabric, coarse, with a fine layer of dust. I pressed lightly. Right in the center, there it was. A slight, circular dip, not deep, but enough to feel unnatural. I lifted the edge of the rug and found a small, round hole beneath it, about the size of a cereal bowl. Not drilled, uneven, like someone had dug into the floor with fingers, nails, or something blunt. The soil underneath was grayish, a bit dry, but held its shape. The hole wasn't fresh, but not old enough to gather dust either. Most importantly, the cabin floor was wooden. The plank right above the hole was slightly bowed, as if something had pushed up from below. I pried at it. It was loose, no nails, like it had been removed and hastily put back. I stumbled backward, eyes fixed on that board. My chest tightened. My mind spun with possibilities. Had someone stayed here before? Was it a rat? A person hiding under the cabin? Was someone down there now? I ran and yanked the radio's power cord from the wall. Silence. The voice vanished instantly. No fade out, no static, just gone. But the depression remained. The hole, the warped board. These weren't things I could have imagined. I turned on every light in the cabin. Each bulb, small, yellowish, did little to make me feel safer. I checked the windows, the door, all locked. No signs of tampering, no muddy footprints, no claw marks. I slumped into the chair, avoiding the radio like it might bite. Opened my laptop, checked the timeline again. No clip matched what I'd just heard. I checked every file. All were from earlier that day. Podcast intro, forest ambience, no narration, no November 1st. I even tried re-recording my own voice, mimicking that eerie cadence, just to reassure myself. It didn't match. Something about the tone, it wasn't mine. Like my voice had been filtered or stripped down to some unnatural, neutral core. That's when I started to feel like the cabin had ears, not physical ones. But it was listening. The wooden walls, the floorboards, the radio. Something here was studying me, mimicking me, and I was too scared to speak again. I just sat there, under harsh yellow light, eyes fixed on the laptop screen, doing nothing. I couldn't edit the podcast, couldn't type a word, just waited. About 15 minutes later, or maybe longer, I had no way to tell. I heard something move beneath the floor. Not a rat, not an insect. A faint creak of wood. And then, the sound of fingernails tapping the underside of the plank. I jumped to my feet, grabbed the boom mic like a weapon, stood in the middle of the room, hands shaking. I didn't dare approach the rug again, but the sound didn't come back. I checked the clock. 11:47. Still. I picked up my phone. No signal. No GPS. Couldn't send a text. I plugged the radio back in, just to see. Nothing. Static. 0.0 FM was gone. I spun the dial up and down, scanning every frequency. No voice. No November 1st. Only static. But beneath that thin layer of white noise, I almost thought I could hear a whisper. I started to believe the cabin wasn't just replaying my voice. It was trying to recreate me. I didn't sleep that night. After I pulled the plug from the radio and confirmed there was no more 0.0 FM signal, I sat in the corner of the room, back against the wall, hugging the boom mic like it was a sacred staff. No sounds came for hours, just my heartbeat, slow, steady but strung tight like a wire. I tried opening the window once. A rush of cold wind hit me. Outside was forest. Thick, unmoving forest. No light, no stars. As if the cabin were drift at some point, maybe around 4 a.m., though I can't be sure. I nodded off. My eyes kept closing every 30 seconds. I didn't dream. Or if I did, I can't remember. But when I woke up, it was still dark. I checked the clock. 11:47. Still. The hands hadn't moved. I looked at my phone. Dead. When I plugged it into my power bank, I realized no current. The indicator light didn't turn on. The battery was full, but no charge flowed. I tried the laptop. Same. The generator still hummed. The cabin lights stayed on. But any device that tracked time or connected to the outside world was cut off. Like the cabin had its own kind of electromagnetic filter. I no longer had a concept of day or night. I kept all the lights on, turned on the mic, recorded the cabin's ambient sound. Still just dead air. No odd noises, no new sounds. Until I accidentally tuned the radio again. At first, it was just to break the silence. I couldn't take the dead quiet anymore. I turned on the radio, expecting some soft static to dull the tension. I twisted the dial, scanning the frequencies. Still nothing. Then, 0.0 FM returned. No warning, no music, No background hum, just a single voice, my voice, rising out of the faint buzz of electricity. November 2nd. I no longer believe the cabin is a place. It feels more like a transmission or a receiver. I've begun hearing myself, saying things I've never thought, but will soon do. Maybe it's teaching me how to become it. I froze, not because of the words, but because the voice was different. It was still mine, but smoother, colder, like a digital replica. No breath, no natural resonance. That voice had been optimized. I opened the recording software and found a file I never saved. It was 11 minutes and 47 seconds long. No background noise, just me speaking. But I've never said any of it. I immediately launched the recording software. There it was, a new file. Default name, no timestamp, no metadata. Exactly 11:47 long. My hands trembled as I hit play. When I heard the audio, I almost threw the laptop against the wall. The voice said, "If someone hears this, I hope you leave as soon as possible. Not because you're in danger, but because the cabin needs someone new. I can't hold on to myself anymore." It was still my voice, but older, deeper, drier, like I had aged decades in a lightless box. I stopped the playback, closed the software, but as I shut the laptop, I realized the radio was still playing. I found her fingernail under the bed, wedged between two floorboards. It's unusually long, almost not human. I don't remember seeing it yesterday. I froze, inhaled, walked slowly toward the bed. Underneath it, a thin layer of dust. I crouched, reached out gently, and yes, there it was, a white, curved fingernail, twice the length of a normal one, ending in a sharp point, slightly curled, like a young antler. I gasped, dropped to my knees, picked it up. It was cold, not brittle like a real nail. It felt more like animal horn. As I placed it back on the floor, I noticed something else. A dark, circular stain on the wood, like something heavy had rested there for a very long time. I don't remember seeing it before. Or maybe I just never noticed. The cabin learns fast. The radio continued. It copies habits, tone, thinking patterns, but it can't mimic memories. I've started losing short-term memories. What I ate, when I slept. The cabin doesn't care. It only needs the voice. I turned the volume down, backed away, leaned against the wall. That voice was no longer me. It was a version of me stripped of all humanity. Like an AI trained on my words, playing them back, minus the soul. I raised my voice. "What is this cabin?" Silence. The radio didn't respond. I tried again. "Has anyone else ever been here?" The radio clicked back on, but it wasn't my voice anymore. A deeper voice. Rough. Hoarse. Definitely not mine. June 19th. I thought I was the first. But the cabin laughed. I didn't hear it laugh. I saw it. The walls swelled. The wood vibrated like a belly laugh. I cranked the volume up. The voice continued, steady, unbroken. I smashed the radio. It didn't die. I set the floor on fire. The flames snuffed out mid-air. The cabin isn't wood. It's not a thing, not a structure. It's a device to repeat, to record, to broadcast, to replicate. I can't remember my name anymore, but the cabin remembers. It plays it over and over until I believe that's who I am. Maybe you'll forget yours too. Maybe you already have. I shut the radio off, ran to the door, grabbed the handle. It wouldn't open. Not locked, not broken. The handle turned, but the door wouldn't budge. Like something outside was pressing. I banged on it, kicked it. No response. I rushed to the window, pulled the curtain. No more trees, no forest. Just a white void. Not darkness, not daylight. Something like fog, but thick, dense. Like the cabin had drifted into a buffer zone. Not quite another world, but no longer part of this one. I don't know where I am, but the cabin does. I looked back at the radio. The display no longer showed a frequency, just one line. Recording complete. The cabin isn't a shelter, it's a voice recorder, and I'm just another voice for it to recreate. I no longer remember how long I've been sitting in this cabin. I've tried counting the times I turned on the radio. 6 times. 6 times the 0.0 FM signal appeared and recited passages I don't recall ever writing. 6 times my voice, or a version of it, narrated actions I would soon take. Not once was it wrong. I once tried to defy the narration. If the radio said I would lift the rug, I made an effort not to. But within hours, I did it anyway. Not out of curiosity, but because the cabin compelled me to. It orchestrated the circumstances. When I was hungry, the only remaining food was precisely in the drawer the voice mentioned. When I was tired, the chair I dozed off in matched the one I described on the radio. I'm increasingly convinced the cabin doesn't just record, it actively designs reality. I don't know where I am. Outside the window remains white, neither bright nor dark, unchanging, motionless, as if the cabin is isolated in a waiting space between a broadcast signal and its reception, like a file pending upload. I'm jotting down notes by hand because my laptop now only opens audio software. No text, no file access. I tried recording my voice again, but each playback yields an old version, words I've never spoken. A voice more like mine than my own. I found someone who came before. One morning, I've lost track of which, I heard a faint creaking from beneath the floor. Unlike before, not the sound of bending wood, but the sound of nails scratching. I backed away from the bed, clutching the boom mic, and approached the depression under the rug. It had grown larger, expanded, as if someone was digging upward from below. I pried off the loose floorboard. Beneath was a hollow, not deep, but something lay inside. A rolled-up piece of paper. I retrieved it and spread it on the table. Handwritten, faded blue ink, neat, compact handwriting, but frantic. Day 17, I believe the cabin doesn't consume flesh. It doesn't devour people. It preserves them, retains voices. Its essence isn't physical, but communicative. The cabin is a microphone. The radio is a speaker. And I am the signal. I've tried staying silent, not speaking, but the cabin doesn't need words. It needs intent, emotion, content. My voice continues to broadcast, even though I've been silent. I once thought I was the first, but there are footprints in the walls, in the wood, in the dust. The cabin records even movement. Not a recording, but a reconstruction. I think the cabin is programmed. It repeats a process. 1. Select a voice. 2. Trap the voice. 3. Learn the voice. 4. Broadcast the voice. 5. Wait for the next person to hear that voice. I don't know who built this cabin, but it's not old, not decayed. The wood has no grain. I tried scratching it. No splinters. The cabin isn't wood. It's a shell. If you read this, please remember, don't let it learn your name. Don't call yourself. Don't say I aloud. I've already failed. The cabin has embedded my voice into itself. I am no longer me. I sat stunned. Each line like a small blade slicing through the thin veil of delusion I was clinging to for sanity. I looked back at the radio and realized something. I had never said my name since entering the cabin. Not once. But this morning when I opened the recording on the laptop, that voice began with, "Hello, I'm Kwa. I run a podcast about the strange and unusual." The radio broadcasts a complete podcast episode. As I tried to find an escape, banging on the door, prying up the floor, opening the cabin's ceiling, the radio turned on again. This time, not a diary, not a whisper, but a full podcast episode. The intro music I once used, the sound effects I had set up, my voice narrating. I had never recorded that episode. Welcome to a special episode of Things You Shouldn't Hear at 3 a.m. Today, I'm going to tell you a story I've never dared to share, because the one who told it before me can no longer tell it. My heart pounded. I backed away from the table. The voice continued, like a broadcast airing worldwide. I came to a cabin in the woods, intending to record a ghost story. But that cabin wasn't a place to tell stories. It was a place to create them. And when you're hearing this, perhaps the voice no longer belongs to me. I screamed, "Shut up!" The radio didn't stop. The volume knob was unresponsive. The power cord had been pulled. The radio was broadcasting through the cabin itself. The cabin doesn't imprison people. It mimics. It replicates. I thought I was the original. But when I hear this segment again, I'm no longer sure. Who is the original? Who is just an echo? The cabin opens the floor. That night, or at some undefined time, I heard a clicking sound beneath my feet. I looked down. The floorboard covering the depression lifted on its own. No wind, no mechanical force. It opened like a box lid. Below was a passage, not a basement. No stairs, just a pitch black void, endlessly deep. I shone a light down. No reflections, no walls, no floor. Only echoes, my voice, repeating every sentence I've ever said, every cough, even thoughts I've only had. And down there, I saw the green glow of a radio, with a line of text displayed, recording ready. I chose not to descend. I don't know if I truly had a choice, but I chose not to step down. I closed the floorboard, placed the table over it, wrapped it with electrical cords, blocked the windows with bookshelves. I sat in the corner, turned on the laptop, opened the recording file to confirm my voice was still intact. But when the file played, the voice said, "I chose not to descend, but the cabin doesn't need me to step down. It only needs me to choose." That's when the voice is confirmed. I realized the cabin doesn't restrain anything. It doesn't force. It doesn't threaten. It merely constructs the scenario and waits for us to willingly become the signal. Tonight, I heard knocking on the cabin door. But there is no door. No exit remains. I once thought the cabin was a physical object. Now I believe the cabin is a voice. This space, where I'm trapped, has no direction, no time, no change. Whether I turn the lights on or off, plug in or unplug devices, day never comes. Nor does night. No brightness, no darkness. Just a pale gray of existence stretching endlessly. I stuffed cotton in my ears, wrote on paper, sat still like a statue. No utterances, no signals, and I saw the cabin begin to waver. The cabin walls breathed. The wood slightly bulged and contracted, like skin. Sounds were muffled. No buzzing lights, no footsteps, no electric hum, as if the cabin was gasping. A machine needing sound to operate. I saw a glimmer of hope. I took one more step, turned off all devices, used a mechanical flashlight, shut down the generator, used paper instead of the laptop. No human voice, no sound, no vibrations. The room fell into absolute stillness. The cabin generated sound on its own. When I thought I was succeeding, the cabin showed it didn't need me. As I sat on the floor, the radio, unplugged, without batteries, emitted knocking sounds. 3 knocks, slow, deliberate. Knock, knock, knock. I didn't dare turn my head, but I knew the cabin has no exit. I've tried them all. The main door, windows, ceiling, floor. So if there's knocking, it means the cabin has created a new door, a threshold, an invitation. I heard the sound of a chair being pulled. I didn't move, but that sound, it was unmistakably the chair in the room. The sound of wood scraping against the floor. Light, slow. Then the chair sound repeated, like a slow playback recording, like a sound test. Pull, scrape, pause. Pull, scrape, pause. Each time identical, as if the cabin was rehearsing behavior, preparing to recreate a scene. My voice spoke. But it wasn't me. The radio replayed my voice, not an old recording, but something I've never said. Thank you for listening to the podcast Things You Shouldn't Hear at 3 a.m. This is the final episode, because from now on, every episode is just an echo, and I am no longer me. I wanted to scream, to refute, to assert that I'm still the original. But I understood. The original doesn't need to prove itself. Only a copy desperately insists it's real. I knocked on the floor, 3 beats, like the earlier door knocking. And I realized the cabin knocked back. 1 beat, 2 beats, 3 beats. Knock, knock, knock. But this time, not from the radio, not from the door. From within the walls, the cabin walls began to change tone. The wood no longer sounded like wood. Each time I touched it, there was a faint echo, like touching a hollow box, or like touching a giant condenser microphone. The cabin walls absorbed sound, stored sound, transformed every touch, every breath, into data. I wondered how many people had been here before me. And then I heard them. Not with my eyes, with sound. The radio no longer played my voice. It began broadcasting others. Female voices, male voices, children's voices, elderly voices. A silent chorus, wordless, just breathing, heartbeats, swallowing sounds. Each person once was me. Each entered the cabin. Each thought they were special. Each thought they would escape. I saw an endless sequence of me's stored in the waves. The cabin doesn't need to keep bodies, just the essence of the broadcast. A window appeared. I didn't open it. I didn't build it. It just appeared. On the northern wall, a pale gray rectangle. No frame, no glass, just an empty space. Behind it was light. Not white, not gray, real light. Like the sun in the late afternoon. Like 5 p.m. sunlight. I didn't run toward it. I didn't dive through. I just stood and watched. And the cabin didn't react. I don't know if this is an exit or just another trap. But I know the cabin has stopped recording. I'm leaving this note behind. Every word handwritten, folded into a bundle, placed inside the small wooden box beneath the floor, where I found if you can hold on to something the cabin doesn't understand, you might escape. A song. A memory that can't be described. A story never told. Something only you have. I'm stepping through the window now. I don't know where it leads, but I know the cabin will need someone new. It might be you. Don't listen to my podcast if you hear it broadcast again on 0.0 FM. Don't believe that voice is mine. And if you see the cabin, don't go inside when the door is already open.